All right, guys. So if FL Studio is getting bored and you're like me and you want something new to really inspire your brain, I recommend hopping into a different DAW. So today we're going to hop into Logic Pro, and it's going to force me to produce in a whole different way because they have a different workflow. All right. So firstly, what I like to do in Logic is very musically based. I don't, because their drums are not the easiest thing to understand, I usually focus more on the music. So let's change the BPM to like 82 BPM. We have the metronome on. And firstly, what we're going to just, let's insert a track here. Let's right click, go to software. And the difference here between FL Studio and Logic, like right off the rip, is like in FL Studio, you can create patterns and you can kind of see a vision. Whereas here, it's like everything's linear and you're not moving puzzle pieces around, which is a very big part of creating in FL Studio. Okay, anyhow. So we're going to click a new software track and let's click the drop down. My favorite starting point is the synthesizer called the Retro Synth. This thing is a monster. Okay, so this has all the Travis Scott, Mike Dean, Kanye West type sounds in here. We're just going to start with the basic patch. I can go back and swap out the sounds. Firstly, let's just record some chords here. Let's record something that low. Let's record this. At the end, I probably will take that out, but it's just there if we want it. Now the piano roll looks different because even when I use my sustain pedal, it does not show elongated notes like it would in FL Studio. So that is a little tricky, again, of a difference between FL and Logic Pro, because in FL it would show all this filled out. Right now it's not showing that. Okay, let's just loop this. So again, I might swap out the ending here. I don't know about those chords on the second half. Now let's go back to the synth. So I'd say Logic Pro, if I had to give you guys like a synopsis, I think it's good for recording and good for sample making. I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of it is in terms of making an entire beat. Because again, it's just such a different workflow. You start to really appreciate FL Studio's. Oh yeah, I gotta like do one thing. You start to appreciate FL Studio's drum programming. Okay, so we're not going to complain while I'm here. I'm just letting you guys know. Okay, now let's go back to the synthesizer. Let's just filter the sound a little bit here. Let me see here. Let's pull this filter back. Give some resonance. And let's give it an envelope so it like decays over time. We're going to pull back the sustain for the filter. So now it moves over time. Let's detune the synth a little bit. See how we don't have to do much for it to sound dope. Now let's see what happens here. I don't know the shortcut to quantize. Let me hit Control A. Just hit this Q. All right, so quantize is just you hit the letter Q. Not a fan of single key shortcuts either, because you could just be typing and then you accidentally hit something. Okay, so now we have this sound. Let's try to find more sounds that go around it. Let's add some more organic sounds here. Let's swap this out. Now, as we do this, I want to go into the stereo out here and I want to run through the new Chroma Glow, which is their new plugin here. and it's going to add saturation. Like even to my voice, if I crank this up, you guys can hear it in my voice. So we're going to produce into this. Okay, so let's try different styles. Let's turn the magnetic up. This one's a little high and low end. Let's try squeeze is very aggressive. Analog preamp, a little bit less aggressive. And the retro tube seems like it has a lot of high end on it. So let's use the analog preamp. I think this sounds good. Let's do style. Let's do colorful here. Let's see what colorful sounds like versus clean. I like the clean version. You really can't tell the difference, at least in my ear. All right, so let's pull that back. So we're just going to produce into this preamp to add a little more bite to the track. All right, let's add some more sounds up in here. Let's do... I feel like everything in Logic is just like, once you do it, it's just done. And like my brain is not motivated to make changes. I don't know how to explain it. Let's try a new instrument here. Let's try the sample alchemy tool here. So this requires a sample. So let's open up our hard drive and look for a sample. For this one, you can pull up a loop, but what I'm going to do in this plugin is going to be granulizing the sound. So let's just find a one shot. Let's do maybe some flutes and then somewhere in the middle range here. So it only takes the first minute of the sample. And then what we could do is click on layers B, C, and D, and it will sample inside of the sample. I'm going to mess with the granular size here. So let's add this in. Let's add a little delay. Let's record it first and then add delay and reverb to it. So pretty basic. That's our contrast layer. So in FL, it's a little bit easier to arrange because again, you can use puzzle pieces, whereas here you have to think about, you're thinking more linearly and not these as puzzle pieces. So that is a little bit of a mind F. So if we go back, let's add some delay. Some tape delay is one of my favorites. This is way more than a delay. This is also a saturator. It does a lot. Turn off the temp sync. Let's cut out some of the lows on the feedback. And I'm also going to run this through a reverb, their Quantec room simulator, just to create a space. Add an EQ. I just want to take out a little bit of low end on this sound here. It's a little heavy on the lows. Now let's reinforce this harmony with more synthesizers here. So for this synth, we're going to take off the filter. Normally I like to start with the initialized patch here because it's just a nice sawtooth. So here we're just going to do the bass line here, copying those root notes. This is more of a contrast layer. Now for Logic, this is the closest thing I've heard a synth sound like the actual hardware. So this is, rarely do synths sound anything close to hardware analog. This actually sounds like an analog synth. I think because it pairs so well with the Mac. We really don't need to do anything to the sound, it's already there. Let's just quantize these notes, hit Control A, hit Q. So the hard part is the drums, trying to figure out the drums. So here I want to start beginning the drums. Let's open up. And normally I don't do my drums from the FPC and FL Studio. I like to do it in the sequencer, but there is I'm forgetting the name here. I think it's called the Drum Designer. Drum Kit Designer. No, that's not it. I always forget the name here. Oh, there we go. Maybe it is the, hold up. We're gonna figure this out. Let me find out what this thing's called. All right, so I found it right after I paused the video. I don't know why they did this, but they put the drum machine designer separate from the drums, which is a very odd thing to do. Anyway, if you click here, you can load up samples, and we can just drag and drop our samples from the browser, which is over here. So this is like not the easiest workflow, but again, FL has its things too, so we can't. Let's just use my go-to sounds. We're not going to get crazy with this. Let's add our snare. Let's add a hi-hat. We need a kick. Now notice we can't really like hear the sample in real time. You have to wait for it. So I could play with my MIDI controller, but this is very like ancient way to do drums. So we're going to click here, go to this little pencil tool and go to step sequencer. This is what I love about Logic. The only mistake they made is they made everything the same color. So again, it's a good step sequencer, and I wish it had more steps so I could visually see everything. Cause right now it's just a lot of steps, but it looks weird. Anyway, switch this to 64. For the hi-hat, where's our hi-hat? I can't tell which one's the hi-hat. I don't even know how to trigger these here. All right, so let's label these so I know what's what. So this is the hi-hat. Okay, now let's go back to the group. And now I can see this is the hi-hat. I wish there was a shortcut to like, let me see if there is a way. Maybe there's a way. Let's try to figure this out. So I wish there was a way to click every other two like in FL Studio. You could just, there's a macro that allows you to just fill in this note value. But here you have to do it manually, which is a little whack. Anyhow, not compared. Okay, so we're at 82 BPM. Now let's go back and start turning the velocity up on these kicks. So let's just repeat this because I don't feel like making 1,000 changes here. Now my brain is really saying the wrong words every time I speak. I also like in Logic Pro's step sequencer, you can create hi-hat rolls pretty fast. So I think they treat these separately. Let's double click in here. And let's say I want to make a hi-hat roll, click the drop down here and then click on the repeat. So these are like different patterns, basically. See how I added a hi-hat roll right here? And you could just left click and change the timing really fast. So FL Studio kind of copied this feature, but it's not the same. You can also offset everything at once. So let's say your hi-hat is just 2 on the grid. You can click this thing where it says note, go to offset and hit the up arrow for everything. It changes the value for everything. The only thing I wish this did was like how in FL Studio you can create a unique pattern. Here, everything is a unique pattern. So it makes you do all these small changes every single time. I'm sure there's a shortcut, I just don't know it. But now you have to basically copy those settings over here. Let's offset it like 3%. Actually, it sounds good at 0. But that's just a technique you guys could use. Now let's go back to everything is trying to be loud right now. So let's turn the drums up, and if we can't get the drums to sit over top of everything, then we need to turn stuff down. Let's go to our drums, see if we can turn up the volume from here. Doesn't look like it, so let's go to the... So I'm pushing the kick and the snare pretty heavily here. So you got it. So for this DAW, you have to push the drums pretty heavily to sound anything remotely like FL. Let's hit Control C. Paste the drums for now. We're not trying to get too exotic with this beat, but I do want to introduce more layers here. Let's see what happens if we don't introduce the chords. I guess you need the chords. I don't know how y'all do 808s in this DAW. It would drive me crazy trying to do 808s in here. Let's find another synth here. Let's go to retro synth. Let's look for some sounds here. Also, you can switch the synth type here. This is like a PPG. So I'm gonna add this in. Let's just record some notes here. I'm treating this like an 808. I messed that part up. Let's run it back. Let's just repeat that small phrase. I've noticed in Logic, I don't commit to longer things. Like when I'm producing, I'm not committing to a long chord progression or like a long melodic phrase. Because I know editing it, I'll go too slow. So just things I'm noticing. Alright, Command R, copies and pastes. So we're getting somewhere. Let's see if we can drop this one more octave here. Doesn't sound the same. I loved about the PPG is that the shape can change based on an envelope in this case. You get these really weird sounds. Let's just leave it as is. Let's add a little detune. I feel like we need like one more expressive sound in here, like a flute or something. And more kicks. Let me see if there's a way to compile these into one. Doesn't look like it. Let me try to hit. Alright, I just feel like we need more kicks. So I like that change up. It's changing the kick. Again, it was a little tedious having to click on each pattern to change it out. All right, this beat still needs like a directional sound. Let's see what we can create from. There's a plugin called Alchemy in here. This is really good. Let's try this. I don't know, these sounds aren't really inspiring. Let's try some real instruments. Also, we have an actual bass we could add in here. Let's add this bass. So my experience in Logic Pro is just like, it's good for recording stuff like ideas. It's not the same inspiration like in FL. You could just kind of click around and do stuff. It's like we just like, I know what I'm doing. And once I'm done doing it, it's like it's done. And there's nothing else. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like much to explore in this DAW because everything's so perfect, which sounds crazy. See, the track fills out with this preamp. You get much more filled out sounds. Mess with this main synth. Oh, another thing you could do here is create stacks. So let's create a track stack, and let's basically we can add more synths into this group. So this is, think of it just like a group of sounds, but they all go through the same mixer in this case. So we can add another sound just by duplicating this. And now I'm trying to make the sound thicker, so I can take the MIDI up to the group level and it will trigger every sound below. So I don't need to copy and paste the MIDI through each one. I just go into the synths and change out the sounds. Now I'm going to sound design here. All right, so that first synth was a little too energetic. So I'm just pulling it back for the second half of the song. All right, there's another plugin called like the Master Assistant. Let's see if we can load that on our stereo bus. All right, so basically you just click where it says mastering and it will like figure out stuff for you. They definitely thinned out the low mids. So not liking that part of this. Let's see if we can. Yeah, I'm not liking how they carved out a lot of the whole density to the track. It just sounds hollow now. Yeah, so that took out a lot of the meat of the sound. So for that reason, we're not gonna use it. We're not gonna use it. Let's just use the compressor because I like the distortion on here. Take off the compressor mode. And let's see if we can find a limiter. So I like how clean it is. When you push Logic, it creates like this compressed sound. And it doesn't sound super distorted like in FL Studio. All right, let's play this one more time. All right, so we created a pretty decent beat. Nothing crazy. It needs way more vocals. Let me show you guys one last thing here. There's something called Varispeed. So if you right click this little icon here, go to customize control bar, click here and go to, I think it's beats. I always mix this up. No, custom. And then we're going to turn on what's called Varispeed. So it looks convoluted up here, but if you click here, go to Varispeed, we can change the BPM. So let's say I want to up the BPM to like let's say 88. And we could use Varispeed here. If you right click, I always forget. Left click, switch this to detune semitone value. And now we can basically change the perception of the key. Let's try out new keys. Let's pitch this up 3 and then down 3. So the thing is, it slows everything down, not just the MIDI notes. So that's how you get, so that, whoa. So that is how you guys get that slowed down sound. Check, check, check. All right, so we're gonna take it off Varispeed. I think it sounds good as is. Let's play it one more time and then we'll wrap this video. You guys can get the project files for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/Helios for these project files. I'll leave a link below. All right, so guys, to get these project files for free, go to busyworksbeats.com/Helios. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.